Craft beer. The nectar of the gods. It's flavorful, it's fresh, it's hoppy, and it's dank. Sometimes it's even chocolatey, and occasionally fruity. It's enjoyed by all kinds of people around the world. Even dogs enjoy craft beer. Well, maybe not dogs. There are cities all over the world known for making great beer, and they tell their stories through the art of brewing. But when it comes to the modern craft beer scene, San Diego, California stands out for its plethora of award-winning breweries.
San Diego, for me, is a very, very interesting beer scene because it's pretty much the center of craft beer in the States.
What's amazing about San Diego, we can make German beers, we can make English beers, we can make stuff that is uniquely San Diego. We don't have to follow any guidelines.
Breweries all over the country and all over the world steal San Diego brewers so that they can have more of that San Diego flavor going on in their beer.
And craft beer fans worldwide consistently rate San Diego breweries among the best in the world.
Folks like Ballast Point and AleSmith and Stone.
Award-winning breweries like Modern Times, Alpine, Pizza Port, Lost Abbey, we're killing it, slaying it.
Those guys continue making those great beers and everybody just kind of flocking to them.
San Diego not only wins big with beer drinkers, it also wins big at beer competitions.
We just arrived in Denver, Colorado for GABF, the Great American Beer Festival. This place is like the Super Bowl of beer.
The Great American Beer Festival, the largest and most respected beer festival and competition in the United States.
How many beers have you had since you've been here?
6.
6? That's it? That's a lot!
Every year, over 50,000 people from around the globe come to GABF to sample beers from every region of the country. Festival goers can expect to sample over 4,000 different beers. That, my friends, is a lot of beer. Pour me whatever that guy's having.
That's rad. The excommunicated Mormon drinking team. I bet they know how to party.
GABF. It's a phenomenal opportunity for brewers around the nation to interact with customers around the nation and go enjoy the spectacle that is GABF.
Drink up! Drink up! That's how we do it here at Great American Beer Fest in Denver, Colorado. Boom!
But GABF isn't all disco hats and drunken unicorns. Real serious business happens here too.
Welcome everybody! Woohoo!
This is the nation's most prestigious craft beer competition and awards ceremony. It's like the Beer Emmys, but instead of dresses and suits, it's beards and t-shirts. But mostly beards. A lot of beards.
There's one big litmus test for the industry, the Great American Beer Festival. So every year you have these awards that are given for craft beer.
Hundreds of certified beer experts. No, you're probably not qualified. Taste beer samples for 3 straight days, judging over 9,000 beers in over 100 different categories. In other words, the best job in the goddamn world. Each beer is judged by taste, aroma, and appearance.
At GABF, they have thousands of entries, so you're asked to move quickly. You're evaluating 11 beers in 5 minutes, and you're pushing the best 3 forward or the best 2 forward, and you're working with 2 other people that are judging the exact same beers you are. It's fun. I enjoy it.
Top entries receive bronze, silver, or gold medals.
And the gold medal goes to Second Chance Beer Company, San Diego, California.
And every year, San Diego, California is one of the most medaled regions in the country.
The silver medal goes to Bowie Knife, Thunderhawk Ailments, San Diego, California.
San Diego always brings home a plethora of awards in different categories.
And the gold medal goes to Private Stock Ale, AleSmith Brewing Company, San Diego, California.
San Diego routinely brings home more medals than most states. Like, that's just fact.
And the gold medal goes to Si Senor Mex Lager, South Norte Beer Company, San Diego, California.
In 2019, San Diego County won 18 medals, more than any other county in the United States. In fact, more than the entire state of Texas.
I think a poor year for San Diego is if we only get 14 or 15 medals at GABF, which is amazing. Those medals are so hard to get.
How did this California beach town become the capital of craft beer? Well, sit back, relax, and open an IPA, or 3, as we explore the art, history, and science of brewing beer in Beer City, San Diego.
heading down to the place, a place where everyone knows me. I just came here to say my peace, my town, my love above the line of Mexico, to where the surfers love to play. Everybody say, drink up, because we're going down to San Diego. Everybody, here's up. Everybody say, drink up.
I'm Aubrey Miller, Creative Director of Amplified Aleworks, which means I get to drink beer and make pretty pictures for a living, basically.
I am a limited edition, no fake, no fiction. Cut me out if you wanna ignore me, but I am the lead story.
One of the cool things about working in craft beer and being an artist is the fact that my medium is paint and I work with color. But brewers who are also artists, it's just that they have a different medium. They're working with hops and malt and yeast and different flavor profiles. Each brewer is an artist, just their artwork can fit in a glass on your table. This is Captain Barley. He's a baby. He's just a good boy, and we like to have him around.
Barley and Aubrey are going to be our tour guides around San Diego.
Hold on, Bar.
As we meet the brewers and business professionals behind the beer.
Barley, you want some window? I got you, boo. Ah! There you go. Yeah, you look out that window, baby. San Diego's always been a beer town. People here love their beer, and it doesn't hurt that it makes the city a lot of money, too.
San Diego's craft beer scene is one of the biggest in the nation, producing over 1 million barrels a year.
The craft beer community in San Diego is so important economically to the city.
Beer has over $1 billion economic impact in San Diego. People are coming from all over to visit breweries, to drink beer at restaurants, to buy beer at bottle shops. It's huge.
San Diego is the best beer city. That's my opinion, but it's also a fact. People travel here every year for Beer Week. It's a $180 million week for San Diego in terms of travel and tourism.
We're headed over to Karl Strauss, and we're gonna see my good friend, Paul Segura. Paul Segura is iconic in the San Diego brewing scene, mostly because he's raised up a whole clan of San Diego brewers who have gone on to win awards, open their own breweries, be hired as brewmasters at different places. So you've been here 20 years, but the brewery itself, this one we're in right now, has been here for
30 years now. This is the oldest continuously operating brewery in San Diego.
When college buddies Chris Kramer and Matt Ratner opened Karl Strauss in 1989, they kicked off the San Diego craft beer revolution with the help of Chris's uncle, master brewer Karl Strauss.
30 years ago, putting a craft beer in front of people that had no idea what craft beer was or how it should look or taste, they just had no experience with it.
Right.
So they were, trepidatious. Had we not had Karl, it would have been tougher because Karl brought so much credibility.
Karl Martin Strauss was born in 1912 in a brewery in Minden, Germany. Following in his father's footsteps, he later became a brewmaster himself. The rise of the Nazis caused Strauss to flee Germany in 1939, to later settle in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where he was hired at Pabst Blue Ribbon.
When you're watching TV boxing bouts with fighters swinging hooks and clouts, the moment that bell begins to sound, it's Pabst Blue Ribbon from the very first round. What do you have? Pabst Blue Ribbon! Pabst Blue Ribbon beer.
So from 1940 to 1984, Karl worked at Pabst Brewing Company. He started in the cellars and worked his way up to vice president. He retired from Pabst in '84, and then he started a second career, and that was consulting on all these microbreweries that were popping up all over the country, like Pete's Wicked Ale, Samuel Adams, Sierra Nevada, Goose Island.
He consulted on all
He
those.
consulted on all of those. He was my boss, my teacher, my mentor, my friend for the first 6 or 7 years I worked here.
Well, should we have a toast to him real fast?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
To Karl.
Cheers to Karl, to independent craft beer.
Craft beer.
You'll agree it's the best beer you've ever tasted. Oh, my name isn't Karl Strauss.
Before we go any further, let's take a moment to learn a little something about beer. Welcome to Beer University, where everyone passes and a few may pass out. Just kidding. Our lawyers say please drink responsibly. Now get back to class.
All beers have the same 4 basic ingredients, and that is malt, hops, water, and yeast.
Beer is mostly water. It makes up 95% of beer's content.
Every beer style in the world developed in a part of the world for a reason, and the reason typically was the water. Why did the stouts come out of Dublin and in Ireland? Because their water is alkaline, and dark malt and roasted malt is acidifying, and so it created a better beer. Pilsner out of Pilsen, Czechoslovakia, soft water. The medium hard waters of Munich, perfect for amber beers.
Makes sense.
Malts, usually barley. No, sillies, not that cutie pie. Malts give the beer color, flavor, and mouthfeel. Hops are the flowers of the hop plant. They give you that bitter flavor that you taste in an IPA. And they act as a preservative. Yeast is a microscopic organism, a fungus. And this little fungi, see what I did there? It's like the magic ingredient in beer. Let's take a closer look. White Labs has been making brewing yeast cultures for the beer industry for over 25 years. And they were founded right here in San Diego.
We're primarily making liquid cultures of yeast for breweries, distilleries, and for wineries. Most people understand yeast from bread making, and so we're actually looking at the same species in beer, but we're looking at something that makes better flavors. If we used bread yeast, it would make beer, but it wouldn't probably taste very good.
These little suckers eat up all the sugar in the malt, and they make alcohol through a process called fermentation.
And then through that process, we're also making CO2, so we're making carbon dioxide, right? And then we're also making all of these other flavor and aroma compounds. So when you're using yeast in a beer, you're trying to create a flavor profile that is desirable. And that's why we think about something like a Hefeweizen, it's banana or clove or a little bit of spice. All of those are really coming from the yeast, not just specifically from the malt or hops or water.
How much of a role does yeast play in the making of a beer?
Yeast is difficult to brew with because it is a fungus, but in the end, you can control it. You can control how much esters and aroma you want out of it. You can control the fruitiness on an ale. You can bring up the fruitiness in a lager. So yeast is an amazing ingredient. It's easily 80% of the flavor in the beer.
Come on, Bar, let's go. We're going to Thunderhawk, dog. Thunderhawk ailments, they're really interesting because it's one of 2 Black-owned breweries in San Diego.
You might remember the name Thunderhawk from the Great American Beer Festival.
The silver medal goes to Bowie Knife, Thunderhawk Ailments, San Diego, California.
In fact, Thunderhawk won 2 medals at GABF. That's quite an accomplishment for a nano brewery.
We're incredibly small. We're a 1-barrel brew house. We're probably one of the smallest in San Diego.
A 1-barrel brew house
Yeah,
there.
it's tiny.
I didn't know that was a thing, to be honest.
It kind of is. You know, we've managed to exist with that.
Can we go check it out?
We're gonna go in, check out our insanely huge brew house. We got some stuff barrel aging right here.
Using the Ballast Point?
Yeah, we're using
barrel?
like old Cutwater bourbon barrels.
So wait, real
bunch of
fast, it
things.
says this one Ian, are you naming all your barrels?
That was already there.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
who Ian is, but I have a story in my head. I don't know if it's true. I'm sure you guys haven't been to mini breweries this big before, but so this is the whole setup right here. This is where all the brewing goes down for Thunderhawk.
So I know that guys hate it when you say this phrase, but this is so cute.
It is cute.
Let's talk about the name Thunderhawk. Like,
Thunderhawk.
what is the origin story of the name Thunderhawk?
We're drinking some beers, hanging out, and the plane's flying over us, and our friend Matt just yells out, "All hail the mighty Thunderhawk," and we thought that was hilarious. So it was a joke, and then it just kind of like stuck. People started calling our beer Thunderhawk. So that was like the origin of the name, "All hail the mighty Thunderhawk," you know, and for us it became like a really cool mantra, you know, and the irony is funny too. We're a 1-barrel brew house, and it's like, "All hail the mighty Thunderhawk," like we're the smallest guys on the block. All the 1 barrel. I love that too. I like the positivity, the power behind it. If you come to our tasting room, you can kind of see it's like a Western Native American kind of motif, and my family heritage is Creole, and we have some Native American ancestry too.
You mentioned your heritage. How does it feel to be like the only not white guy in beer in San Diego?
It's like,
or possibly like the whole country, other than
put it
like
this
Garrett
way.
Oliver at Brooklyn Brewing.
There's not a lot. They're out there. We're out there. You know, it's very few. When you're talking about, I think I've got a list of like 20 places that are either head black brewer or black owned in craft beer out of like 7,000, breweries. So it's kind of crazy. And it's one of those things that I think that like craft beer has this relationship, I think, like America does with all things, with the black culture that wants to be a part of it, but I don't think knows how to approach it. And I think you see that in like, the most common thing is like the music in the tasting rooms or beer names. I can't tell how many beer names are hip hop references.
Totally.
Like Monkish is like every beer is a hip hop reference.
Well, look at Melvin too.
Yeah.
Their whole thing is Wu-Tang.
Right. And so I've never shied away from things because there's people who the majority doesn't look like me. I think generally craft beer is a welcoming place in San Diego. I'm not going to speak for the rest of the country, but San Diego does a good job.
Yeah.
Much like the restaurant industry, much like the bar industry, breweries are going to open, breweries are going to close. This is a very high-risk business, and it's volatile. It's not this golden dream where you just put water and hops in and then barley and money comes out. This is a fucking scary business.
It's a lot to stand out in a crowded market. In San Diego, it's definitely a crowded beer market. We have over 150 breweries. Most of them have all won medals.
And that's 150 different breweries, and then each brewery has their own locations. We have 5 in San Diego. So I mean, if you took total locations in San Diego, there's probably 300 minimum. It's nuts. And it's ultra competitive too. Yes, we're all friends and we share that camaraderie, and if I need an ingredient, I can call my friends here or there, but at the end of the day, it gets competitive and you need to be at the top of your game, creating good beers.
We're gonna go meet up with my friend Michael Skubik, who owns Old Harbor Distilling Company. He was originally one of the co-founders of Mike Hess Brewing, and he made the leap from craft brewing to craft distilling. What was your role within Hess Brewing?
I don't know, it was me and Mike. So Mike would make the beer and I'd sell it and do the marketing. It was cool because it was back in craft beer's infancy, so everybody was just trying to figure out how to get things done. I actually wrote a blog that laid out the instructions on how to open a brewery. I don't know how many breweries have opened from reading that blog, but it had like 1 million views at one point, so maybe a couple.
So you were like an early influencer in the beer world.
I guess so, yeah, and I created the nano brewing list that kept track of all the really small breweries because I was super excited about it back then.
After leaving the craft beer industry, Michael opened the first urban distillery in downtown San Diego. Drawing from his experience in brewing, Old Harbor Distilling quickly became well known for its flavorful craft spirits and has won numerous awards.
All spirits are either beer or wine or sake, whatever the fermentation base is, that's what determines what your spirit is, the final product. Gin's usually made from a neutral base that you add juniper to, and that's what legally makes it gin. Whiskey's made from beer, but we actually go to different breweries to get the mashes made. So instead of investing like another $100,000 in a brew house, we just drive down to our friend's brewery and have them make it for us.
So what made you make the jump from brewing to distilling? Like what was that thought process?
When I opened up Hess Brewing, there were 28 breweries. And it went from 28 breweries to about 120 by the time I left Hess in like a 4-year period, which is insane. So I just thought it was gonna get too crowded, and I was looking at the distilled spirit space, and at that point, there was only 1 distillery in San Diego. Yeah, I just saw that the beer industry is just gonna get more and more crowded. I mean, there's always room for good beer though. A brewery could open tomorrow and kill it as long as they make good beer, because at the end of the day, people want good beer.
Once again, it's time for Beer University, where we explore beer styles. There are over 100 different styles of beer, and most are either ales or lagers.
So lagers are typically cleaner, a little crisper, drier, often lighter, and ales can run the gamut. They could be super dark and opaque, like stouts, or they could be kind of light and fruity, hoppy beers. There are certain beers that allow natural yeasts and bacteria in the air to ferment them. Wild ales, sour beers, things like that. Once again, beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. You just leave wort out, it will naturally, spontaneously ferment and create wonderful flavors as God intended.
Now that we know a little bit more about beer, how about we make some? Huh? Can we? Could we? Can we? Please?
What kind of beer are we brewing right now?
We are brewing a single hop Mosaic Session IPA.
We're in the original Karl Strauss brew house that's been in operation since 1989. So how do you brew beer anyway? And what is that tank for? And what does that light mean? What does it mean? Don't worry, we're gonna break it all down for you.
This is the hot water tank. This is a cold water tank.
It says cold liquor tank on there.
Those are English terms. I don't know why they call them cold and hot liquor tank when they're actually just water storage tanks. This is a mash tun, brew kettle, heat exchanger. From the heat exchanger, it goes right into one of 5 fermenters.
Cool.
Right here we've got malted wheat and malted barley. That's going to be used in today's brew. So you see the white stuff, that's kind of like the starchy inner part of the barley kernel.
Yeah, totally.
And then you also see a lot of husks. The husks have live enzymes in them. So once we add warm water to this, the enzymes will convert the starches that you see into sugars.
Okay.
So all we got to do is add some water in here, mix it together like it's a big pot of oatmeal. And in
Sweet.
15 minutes we'll have sugar.
Let's do it.
So I'm going to get the hot water going.
The hot water travels from the hot liquor tank into the mash tun, where it will be mixed with grains.
So this is really good for your complexion.
Is it?
Yeah.
Like
We'll
the
open up your
saunas?
pores. Okay, we're about ready to start pouring it in.
The mix of malted barley and other grains are poured into a mash tun to create vert.
So I dump a couple bags in. Now this is my handy dandy mixing paddle. This brewery is so old that it doesn't have its own mixing paddle, like some of the newer ones.
You have to do it by hand?
Yeah, these young brewers, they're all spoiled. So right now we're adding wheat. You ready to pour some in?
Yeah. Oh, this is heavy.
Hazy IPAs, we put oatmeal and we put wheat, and then we don't filter it, we don't use any clarifiers to make the beer look nice and cloudy. I still have to throw some oats in there, so I'm gonna do a little bit of that right now.
Yeah. So why did you choose these different types of malt and oat profiles for this beer?
This pale two-row malted barley is kind of a staple in most beer recipes. The rest of the cereal grains that we're using are sort of what we call adjuncts or specialty malts.
And malt is really where you get your color from usually, right?
Yeah, malt is sort of to beer what the grapes are to wine.
Okay.
It's where a lot of the flavor and color and most importantly the sugar comes from. All right.
Did we do it?
We did it.
Sick.
There are enzymes that are activated by the hot water that are going to convert the starches into sugars.
Okay.
So once the vert is nice and clear, then we'll start pumping it into the brew kettle.
Let's do it.
Okay. Open that valve.
I got this, I got this.
The vert from the mash tun flows into the brew kettle.
And in the brew kettle is where we'll bring it to a boil and we'll add our hops.
Our mosaic hops, right?
Our mosaic hops, which are very nice hops. And we'll boil for about 90 minutes. After a 90-minute boil, we'll pump the wort through a heat exchanger.
What does the heat exchanger do?
The heat exchanger is where we cool the boiling wort from 212 degrees down to about 68 degrees using cold water. So the cold wort goes to a fermenter that's been cleaned and sanitized and where yeast is already waiting. So the yeast will consume the sugars and create alcohol and CO2.
So science.
Science.
Beer science.
Yes.
That, my friends, is the art of brewing beer. You just wait a couple weeks for fermentation, and then you can pour yourself a work of art in a glass. Hey, he still didn't tell us what that light meant.
It's your problem now. It's your problem now. It's your problem now. It's your problem
now. We're heading over to Amplified East Village right now. My co-pilot Barley here has been drinking too much beer apparently because he looks like he's about to pass the fuck out. We're gonna go meet up with Alex Pearson, owner, operating manager, brewery financial guru. Maybe they'll want their van back, I don't know.
Amplified Ale Works was founded in 2012. They're best known for their crushable West Coast IPAs, but they've also won awards for their smooth lagers.
I originally got hired by Amplified Ale Works because of my different connections with bands and music industry professionals. Amplified wanted to be a music-focused brewery, so they called on somebody from the music industry. At the time, I was putting on shows, doing artwork, band posters, and promoting concerts, and they felt like that was kind of the right energy to help with the brewery.
Amplified has always been about music. We want people to realize that we are grounded in the local music scene, and that is what inspires us.
I remember one time we talked about if Amplified were like a record label.
Yeah,
right?
and I think that's how we've always approached it.
It's my job to make sure that our can labels, our menus, our interior design give us a look, give us a feel, a vibe for people to really want to grab onto. In our original location, we have photos that were taken by Jennifer Finch, the bassist for L7, while she was out on tour with other bands. There's Gwen Stefani, Courtney Love, Keith Morris, Christian Death, Mike Ness,
Chili
Henry Rollins.
Peppers.
Yeah, Chili Peppers when they open up for the Dickies. Like, people don't
Yeah.
even understand the history that is actually on those walls. And then after that, we started working with Kirk Dominguez, who was the editor of Flipside, old school punk rock magazine.
And I think the first piece that we got from Kirk was a photo of Bad Brains that we blew up and put on the wall in like a 20 by 15 foot huge mural.
We're like, let's make this life size.
Yeah. And then he had a film strip of multiple shots of Nirvana we just thought was so iconic. It's like Kirk like
it looks like
smashing
Kirk
guitar.
smashing a guitar. It's so fucking cool.
With Amplified, we have venues at each of our locations. And my favorite location that we have a venue at is East Village, where we have the Acid Vault. I painted and carved and sculpted an entire like psychedelic scene in the basement of Amplified. Basically, I took a dark cement box and turned it into an acid trip. That way, touring bands have a place to play. Bigger bands who are going to be coming into bigger venues can do secret shows down here.
You're gone for good, she's gone for good, and I can't tell you why. No, you said goodbye.
With the Acid Vault, it's a huge opportunity for us to really support local bands and give them a venue that they can make their own.
Sometimes brewers find inspiration by collaborating with each other on a new beer.
It's a chance for brewers who are sort of fans of each other to brew beer together.
And I imagine you can learn from each other.
Absolutely.
The collaboration process isn't just limited to brewers working with each other. They also work with other creative people.
We do collaboration beers with different bands. We worked with Western Settings, the Bomb Pops. We also did a beer collab with Motorhead. It was really fun for us because if Amplified was a band, it would be Motorhead. So for us, it was really cool to be able to do that collab and put that beer out in the world.
Not everybody that we're working with in these collaborations really know what the ingredient list needs to be, you know, but what we can kind of dive into is like, what flavors are we looking for? Is it gonna be bold and black, or is it gonna be light and, you know, pale in color?
But then you have like the guys from like Real Big Fish who are like, know what they want.
Those guys were huge craft beer fans, home brewers. They knew exactly what they wanted. They said, hey, we're thinking we want to do this dry hop Kolsch.
It was one of my favorite beers that
So
we've
good.
ever done. They were so much fun to work with.
Yeah, that was a blast.
The Deftones, they did a great job partnering up with us, helping to create a beer style that they really liked, that we really liked. Their artwork was fantastic.
I think as brewers, we're all just making different music.
Okay.
So we can be fans of each other, but we can also steal riffs or whatever,
Right,
you know.
right.
Hey, I really like the flavor that you've gotten in that beer, you know.
Is that kind of like how Collabapalooza came about?
Yes.
Every year, Karl Strauss sponsors Collabapalooza, a festival in honor of collaboration.
Collabapalooza is a celebration of San Diego craft beer. People collaborate with each other, they make a great beer and they bring it to the event. And people who show up to the event taste stuff they've never tasted before by their favorite brewers.
And likely they'll never taste again either.
They're usually one-offs that never get brewed ever again.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
But the process of brewing beer isn't the only way collaborations are born in the beer world. Most breweries have a visual artist or designer that creates original art pieces for each new beer.
I get to work alongside now with brewers. They give me a beer and I have to make a visual representation of what that beer tastes like. So they're doing their art, I'm doing my art, and we're co-creating an art project for people to enjoy, not just visually, but also through taste.
Another painter who creates artwork for a San Diego brewery is Sean Dominguez. the artists for Pizza Port and their sister brewery, the Lost Abbey.
I surfed all my life, and then I did surfing competitively as an amateur all through my high school years. So the Pizza Port stuff kind of came naturally. So it's like, oh yeah, Southern California surf style, cartoony, kitschy stuff. I mean, I used to get in trouble for it in high school. I'm supposed to be taking notes. I'm drawing pictures of waves and guys surfing. Some teachers embraced it, some teachers hated it.
When the Lost Abbey was founded in 2006 and started producing Belgian-style barrel-aged beers, Sean had a chance to evolve his art style. And like the Lost Abbey's beer, he found an old-world inspiration.
My grandma knew that I was really into art, and she had this book from a famous Renaissance artist called Titian, and he's renowned for doing like biblical paintings of Jesus and like the angels and stuff that kind of integrated Greek mythology into a lot of his paintings. So it was kind of like a bastardization of the religious paintings of the time. It was a big influence when it came to this, biblical themes and scenes and stuff like that. Since then I've kind of gone with that with a lot of my other paintings. Skulls and death and doom and fire or brimstone.
Probably the most iconic artist in the San Diego beer scene is Paul Elder from Ballast Point.
As an artist, I really look up to Paul Elder. He hand paints every single design that he does for each beer. And again, each beer has its own look.
The point I like to make about our artist, Paul Elder, he's the same artist who's done all of our stuff from the very beginning. And this place is kind of an art gallery of Paul's work if you look around.
How did you end up working with Ballast Point?
I printed shirts and put my artwork on them for a living. And the part of the deal was, okay, I'll do your art for free, but I'm your shirt guy. So they got a hold of me and I printed their shirts for Yellowtail Pale Ale, Calico, and Big Eye, the earlier beers. And the last order I did was, it was like 400 and something sculpin shirts. It took me a week.
Damn.
Oh man, this isn't working. I can't do this. So they made me a salaried artist. You know, one thing led to another. They kept growing.
One of my favorite stories about Paul Elder is the Yellowtail logo in the beginning. This is how we learned quickly about Paul Elder. He kind of did a yellowtail with a nice little curve to it, and the owner, Jack White, came back to him and said, hey, can we curve that a little bit more so we can fit on the label a little bit more? He's like, no. Yellowtails don't bend that way. That's as far as it will bend. We're like, okay, sounds good.
Done.
Paul's been our artist for almost 25 years. He's completely self-taught. So the ones back here are printed from his sketchbook pages. The octopus, it's my favorite by far because it has all these different drafts of the eyes as well as notes as he's working through the process, right? The lack of a mouth makes the expression less evident. And so you can see all these different expressions that the octopus may have had.
Most fish, they have a round expression in this eye, but if you put a little edge to the brow ridge, it becomes angry right away.
Yeah.
It's still realistic, gives it.
Just subtle details.
So for the octopus, I wanted to convey an emotion, and it's kind of like Yoda. He's like, oh, the wisdom of the ages.
Craft beer is in the lifeblood of San Diego. So much so, there's an entire magazine dedicated to the craft, West Coaster Magazine. Mike Schess is one of the founders of West Coaster, obviously embedded in the San Diego beer scene. He owns the magazine covering beer news for San Diego.
My business partner Ryan Lamb and myself, we're San Diego natives, and we grew up drinking San Diego beer, and we're like, oh, there's got to be a magazine covering this cool thing that we're into in our hometown. And in 2009, 2010, there was absolutely nothing. There was one beer blogger. We were like, how is this possible? This great, cool, awesome thing has no one covering it. We're like, well, we could do this.
So the two set out on a mission to cover San Diego's growing craft beer scene.
The magazine is distributed every single month into the tasting rooms that serve the beer, the bottle shops that sell the beer, and the breweries that brew the beer. Anywhere the beer is, we want West Coaster to be. West Coaster has to be everywhere because we have to keep up with this crazy beer scene. San Diego has a longer beer history than most people realize. There's been beer in this area for over 100 years.
Well, if we're going to learn about San Diego beer, we need to go back, way back. Can somebody get my DeLorean?
Whoa, not that far back, guys. Come on.
San Diego had its first brewery by 1868.
It was called Cholas Valley Brewing. It was about 5 miles southeast of San Diego City Center, which, being that San Diego was about 4,000 souls altogether, was not a whole lot of customer base for brewing.
Judith Downey is the curator at the Brewchive, an archive at Cal State San Marcos dedicated to preserving San Diego beer history.
By 1870, a second brewery opened, City Brewery, and they were more in the center of town. And Mission Brewing started in 1913.
There was a total of 7 breweries in San Diego by the time some crazy kooks decided Prohibition was a good idea.
For decades, the temperance movement in America had been working to curb the consumption of alcohol. In 1918, the 18th Amendment of the United States Constitution was passed, bringing in Prohibition.
There was the federal legislation called the Volstead Act, which actually prohibited the manufacture and sale of alcoholic beverages. It didn't mean you couldn't drink, it just meant that you had no way of getting a hold of it legally. There was a lot of bootlegging going on, but bootleggers really preferred to work with hard alcohol because you could get a lot more dollar for a smaller quantity of product.
Hey, stop wasting all that perfectly good beer. What are you doing?
Near beer, which was like 0.05% alcohol, was allowed, although a lot of temperance people didn't even like that.
I solemnly promise, God helping me, to abstain from the use of all distilled, fermented, and malt liquors, and that means wine and beer. I don't drink, and I will do all I can to keep you from drinking. Amen, amen, amen.
But Tijuana, of course, could legally furnish alcohol to customers who came across the border. And as a result of that, San Diegans could certainly just walk right across the border, consume beer, and walk back. There was no law against coming back into the country drunk.
During the course of Prohibition, Tijuana grew from a small frontier town of about 1,000 people to a booming tourist town with over 11,000 residents. As a result, breweries like Mexicali and Azteca Cerveceria opened in nearby Mexicali to provide beer to this growing tourist destination.
When it became clear that Prohibition wasn't working and they were going to end it, they decided to stagger loosening Prohibition. So beer and wine were first made legal, and then later on hard alcohol was made legal.
This is the day we have long hoped for. Let us drink to a further liberation of the American people. Happy days are here again. Prosit. Salute them.
13 years without beer. Not me, or honestly anybody in San Diego.
But as soon as it became apparent that beer was going to be able to be produced and sold throughout the United States, Azteca Cerveceria announced that they were going to move into San Diego as soon as they could.
Aztec and several other breweries were able to operate for a time, but they just couldn't compete with the growth of big beer.
Even though San Diego was producing 25% of California's beers, that was a drop in the bucket compared to national beer companies.
By 1953, all San Diego breweries had closed. But changes in the law reopened the door for people to begin homebrewing.
Homebrewing was actually never legalized after Prohibition. It was not legalized until President Jimmy Carter signed it into law in 1979.
For the first time since Prohibition, homebrewing was legal, and San Diego brewers couldn't wait to take advantage of it.
I got into homebrewing because my dad and I would go fishing every summer. We were at August Shell Brewing Company in New Ulm, Minnesota, and they had a magazine. And it just said, brew your own beer. And it was that little teeny ad. You know, I got back, I'm like, oh, we have a homebrew shop in town. And I went down there and looking at everything. You have no idea what a hydrometer is, what all these buckets are for, what these, you have no idea what you're doing.
There definitely was a very strong home brewing community, and still is a very strong home brewing community, which has only bolstered the business of craft beer.
Homebrewing clubs were formed, including Quaff, the Quality Ale and Fermentation Fraternity.
Quaff is one of the largest and one of the most winningest homebrew clubs here in the States. And you know, I think a lot of innovation and kind of inspiration for the craft beer scene here has come from the foundation of the homebrew scene. There's a lot of people that even made that jump to become brewers or even actually have opened up their own breweries.
You know, it's just startling the number of professional brewers in San Diego that started as homebrewers in San Diego.
My jump from home brewing to professional brewing happened overnight. I got offered a job, was in a professional brewery within 2 days, 6 months into my tenure there. We won a gold at Great American Beer Fest. We won a gold medal 2 years later at the World Beer Cup, and then I was voted the West Coasters Best Brewer in San Diego for 2015.
What I really appreciate, both as a home brewer in Quaff and as a young brewer in the Brewers Guild, was just the collective of people that you could talk to. At its infancy, the quality of beer coming out of San Diego was so strong because of the collaboration and people talking to each other and talking about techniques. One of the original homebrew stores was at Ballast Point, Homebrew Mart over in Linda Vista. So many people really established themselves in San Diego in the beer scene, bought their equipment there.
Homebrew Mart was absolutely pivotal to San Diego beer. At Homebrew Mart, you could buy fresh yeast, you could buy hops, everything you needed. And in a central location in Linda Vista, more or less metropolitan San Diego, where brewers could come and get fresh supplies to make good beer. You need good ingredients to make good beer.
Jack White started Homebrew Mart, which became Ballast Point in 1992. And I think Homebrew Mart's original location was like 600 square feet or something, maybe 900 square feet. In 1996, they bought the first brewing equipment. I think it was a 15 barrel. We cranked that thing so hard for so many years. Basically ran that thing until the wheels fell off. I mean, up until about 2004, 2005, all the beer was brewed in the back of Homebrew Mart.
Shortly after brewing their first professional beer, Ballast Point hired a young brewer named Colby Chandler.
They started brewing Yellowtail Pale Ale in September of 1996, and I came on in July of 1997.
Colby Chandler with Ballast Point, he built the highway we're all driving on right now.
One of my really good friends, Colby Chandler, that dude's an encyclopedia of beer and as brave as it comes when he wants to make a beer.
He thinks like a chef. With flavor profiles. He also understands brewing process and brewing ingredients and how to coax out those flavors when he needs to.
I ran that location for 16 years. Part of being the third brewer at Ballast Point was I became the general manager of Homebrew Mart. Homebrew Mart was kind of the hub of the San Diego beer wheel. And the more people learned about brewing, the more they opened up bars, the more they opened up their own breweries, the more they brought beer into their restaurants. So you have all these different spokes, but they all eventually kind of, in the early days, came back to Homebrew Mart as kind of that base, you know what I mean? That kind of anchor.
You guys came to the right spot if you're looking for craft beer history. I'm Larry Manassa-Canyon. I was the front of the house manager for Homebrew Mart Ballast Point from about 2006 to 2013. When I first started here, there was a window here at a bar and you would walk up to here to get your tasters. This was a little swinging door and it was this hot little hovel where we would sit there and take 11-pound boxes of hops and weigh them into 2-ounce bags. I was also a customer of this place from 1998 until I started working here, so you'd kind of say I've got a pretty long history with this place. We had 15 tap handles, but you could only do a 5-ounce pour, one at a time, and we couldn't charge more than $1. And so we would have to have little clipboards with people's ID, and we had to mark off every taster that they had because they couldn't have 2 Sculpins or 2 Dorados or 2 Victories at Sea.
If you have 2, you're drinking. It was a tasting license.
How many tasting rooms are there in San Diego now that it's just taken for granted that you can get a half pour, a taster, a pint, a growler, or whatever? But I mean, there was a time when it was not easy to do. Like the cops and the ABC, and nobody really knew what to do with tasting rooms.
This was the first brewery tasting room in California. Jack had to petition the state after a trip to Napa, and he was impressed with what the wineries were able to do. And he came back and he said, I'm a producer, why can't I have a tasting room?
This early wave of San Diego breweries set the tone for a growing craft beer industry.
I think there were some early pioneers like Carl Strauss that helped pave the way for everybody to be able to make amazing, fun craft beer.
Going back to '88, I remember how excited I was when Carl opened, and my dad and I would go into the first brew pub and taste fresh beer. It was amazing, and I laughed because they had a beer that was so strong they could only give you 4 ounces of it, and it was called Horton's Hooch, and I think it measured in at about 7.5 ABV. That's kind of like mid-range IPA right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was delicious, and big fan of Carl. I thank them quite a bit for making San Diego great. And I think it wouldn't be fair if I didn't mention Stone Brewing. Stone really had faith that craft beer was going to make it, and I give them a lot of credit for San Diego's success too. They kind of had this attitude of, you know what, you're going to pay a little more, but it's going to be worth it. So we didn't get caught in this race of just trying to make the cheapest beer we could. We were trying to make the best beer we could, and we were looking for the people that were going to spend that extra $1 at the bar to get something they really enjoy.
We're gonna go see my homie, Nate Sirocco, patron saint of craft beer in San Diego.
Fucking love Nate Sirocco. He really is just like this kind of iconic, larger than life human. He's known for being able to chug beers faster than anyone else. He's an awesome cook, awesome human, loves beer, huge supporter of the beer community, and everybody loves him.
My name is Nate Sirocco. I am a brand ambassador for Modern Times. I bartend and I do special events and I make sure our beer sells in bars. Some people call me the patron saint of beer. Most people call me the Islander. I've been doing San Diego beer for 15 years and people remembered who I was because I wasn't a white guy with a beard.
All right.
I've worked at a lot of breweries and done stuff on the side for them, including Alpine, Stone and Ballast Point, Pizza Port, primarily all the big San Diego breweries I've done something for. I was born in Saipan, which is an island in the South Pacific. That's why everybody calls me an Islander. I was adopted by a bunch of lovely white people, and that's how I ended up in San Diego selling beer. I started in the beer scene by working as a cook. I've been trained. I'd worked in professional kitchens already at that time for quite a while. That was the beginning. That's how I ended up helping breweries out. Pizza Port was one of the first ones. So they'd go, hey, we need somebody to cook food for the anniversary party. And that's one of the ways that people got to know who I was, because they'd be like, you're that Islander dude at such and such festival. Pizza Port's 30 years old. They're one of the originals. They're OGs.
Nate is going to take us to Fathom Bistro, one of the most San Diego places to drink beer, to meet up with two of the founding fathers of San Diego's craft beer scene, Tommy Arthur and Vince Marsalia of Pizza Port and the Lost Abbey.
When you and I used to cook at the festivals, I never knew you were Vince the owner. I just knew you were Vince like that would cook.
You used to yell at me.
Yeah, I used to yell at him. I'd be like, what are you doing? Stop doing that. And then Noah was the one that's like, you know Vince is the owner of Pizza Port, right? This was like my 4th festival with you. And I'm like, what? He's the owner of fucking Pizza Port?
In March of 1987, Vince's sister Gina bought a struggling pizza place in the sleepy coastal town of Solana Beach in North County, San Diego.
And I just came out for the summer. I was going to college and I had maybe a year left on my degree and I just never left. I love San Diego.
That was what, 89?
87.
Oh, Jesus.
When were you born?
82.
All right. We put the brewery in 92, and I remember when Tommy came on, I showed him the brew house, and he's like, yeah, I know what to do. And I was like, there's no way. Like, you want to go through a brew? And he was like, no, I got it. And
pretty simple.
I was like, well, call me if you have any problems, you know, and I never got a call. And then you still have to wait, you know, for the beer to be ready. And so I waited, and the beer tasted awesome, and it just got better from there.
Tommy Arthur at Pizza Port, talk about a legend. Everybody respects him. You have to respect Tommy Arthur or else you just don't know anything about beer basically, or humans. He's a great person too. So great guy, great brewer, amazing visionary really.
Tommy Arthur was hired in 1997 by Pizza Port Solana Beach. His time there was legendary, winning 13 medals at GABF, and in 2006, they opened the Lost Abbey, specializing in barrel-aged Belgian beers. In 2018, Tommy was awarded the prestigious Russell Shearer Award for Brewing Innovation, an honor bestowed on only 21 other brewers in its history.
I think there's a big distinction between someone who makes good beer and someone who's a great brewer. But I think that boils down to how much you participate in the community, how well you're respected by your peers. There's plenty of people that can make really great beer and they're not respected for their contributions. So I think being a part of the community is a big part of being a great brewer.
So let's go head on over to Coronado, which is one of the older breweries here in San Diego. They're pretty big nowadays. Barley, you're fucking up the turn signal, bro. What? Beer skis.
It's actually an Australian pale ale.
Okay, cool. Oh, it's good. It's really clean and really refreshing.
It's only 4.5%, so it's a daytime beer.
Yeah, I don't think at Amplified we know how to brew anything under like an 8%. So
Those are
we're like,
nightcaps.
what does that even mean? Is that still a beer?
Coronado Brewing was founded on Coronado Island, a tourist destination just across the bay from downtown San Diego.
We all opened in the summer of 1996.
And
August 30th, 96 was the day we opened our doors in Coronado.
what other breweries were around in '96 that kind of maybe inspired you, especially ones that are still around today?
Pizza Port in Solana Beach. It was actual brew pub. Ballast Point and Stone started as distribution companies, so they didn't get into the restaurant side of the business till much later.
Stone opened about 3 weeks before we did.
So what made you guys settle on, let's do a brewery?
We wanted to differentiate ourselves from the restaurants in Coronado and San Diego, so having beer that you actually made on site was an attraction to people, to the tourism that was there, to the military that has always been a part of Coronado, to the locals, to have something that was actually made in Coronado by hand. Yeah, neither of us were brewers. We didn't do home brewing. We just thought the business side of it was interesting, and nobody was doing it in Coronado, and there's very few in San Diego.
So you guys came from it more of a business aspect rather than a passionate home brewer perspective.
I think it was more of a passion for Coronado because our family's been there since the early 1900s.
Oh, so you guys have deep roots.
We grew up in Coronado, a block away from the brewery there. I feel like our brewery has helped the city of Coronado further put it on the map. I mean, it's always been a resort destination. We opened up markets, you know, Arizona, Nevada.
We're in 14 different states right now in about 15 different countries.
What do you think is the key to your guys' success of still being around when others have kind of dropped out?
Grit and determination.
Not giving up.
Not giving up. I mean, there's a lot
of ups and downs.
I heard one of you guys was an underwear model or something like that.
Ron.
No, that was Rick.
So which one of you was it?
I was a hand model.
No.
I actually, yes. For about 6 years, I traveled the world, living mostly in Europe, but Asia, Hong Kong, Japan, Tokyo, ended up down in Australia. And I did do a little bit of underwear modeling, so that was part of it. I was in a little better shape. Didn't drink as much beer, or I worked out a lot more.
My dog's still here? Oh, he's right there. Oh boy. So did you ever think, being a young kid from New York, moving out to San Diego, that you'd be standing here at Coronado
No.
doing this?
No, me and all my buddies were like heavily tattooed by the time we were 18, like way into like the New York hardcore scene. We thought for sure we'd just be like commercial painters or something like that, you know?
Blue collar all the way.
For sure. The scene has afforded a lot of us luxuries to grow up, but we didn't have to sacrifice
You don't really have to
our
grow
punk
up.
rock, you know? Like, we can still have our own unique attitudes in craft beer, and it's widely accepted. It's all good. As long as you're a decent human about it, it's all good.
I have to agree, for sure.
Yeah.
Very few jobs I can go dressed like this.
I was a kindergarten teacher for a little while. I worked at a mobile gas station for a little while. Those were all great and had their unique benefits, but man, nothing beats craft beer, period. And now I get to be a CEO for one of the most rad companies on the planet.
Nice.
You know? So I'm completely stoked all around.
So your job doesn't suck?
I wake up every day stoked to go to work, and most people can't say that.
One of the most respected and most award-winning breweries in San Diego is AleSmith Brewing Company.
Let's go check out AleSmith. Come on, Bart.
The owner and head brewer, Peter Zine, is a Grandmaster beer judge. He won more than 400 awards for his home brews before acquiring AleSmith. That is a lot of awards, y'all. But Peter's predecessor was also a highly respected brewer who changed San Diego's beer history forever.
The prior owner, Skip Virgilio, super talented dude, he won a medal for one of his beers at GABF. It was the first medal won by a San Diego brewer, and I think that's when we started getting a lot of attention.
Skip opened AleSmith in 1995, and Peter later volunteered at the brewery.
When I had the opportunity to purchase AleSmith in the summer of 2002, I jumped on it.
Under Peter's leadership, AleSmith has gained a reputation for being one of the top breweries in the world.
When you were a little kid, did you dream about being a brewer when you grew up?
As long as I can remember, and being a very little boy, 3-4 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I say, I want to be an artist. And I don't really know where it came from. I'm a moonchild, birth sign, left-handed person, and I love to draw and paint and write. So for me, brewing was my art. I draw okay and I paint okay, but here was a liquid art that I could do.
How do you parallel art with brewing?
I think back about people like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, and like I just admire great art. I think it's the ultimate freedom of expression.
when you started home brewing, how old were you about?
I was already 32 years old, so maybe late to the party, but I just found homebrewing fascinating. Something that you could be creative with and perhaps do something no one else has ever done, which is hard to say these days. I got into home brewing not to save money. I wanted to make the best beer I could. And so I was mail ordering yeast vials from yeast banks around the world and growing them from a single cell up to pitchable amounts.
So you were like harvesting and growing your own yeast before White Labs had live yeast?
Yeah, well, White Labs right around the same time was just starting. But yeah, I was really curious about the process. And so I bought all the equipment to use the wire loops and heat them until they're red and scraping little teeny invisible things onto auger plates.
You got real nerdy on
this.
this.
I got way nerdy. In total, I brewed 157 batches of home brews before becoming a professional brewer, and I kept meticulous records that I still go back to now to kind of tweak some AleSmith beers once in a while.
Oh wow, so the beers that are here now kind of harken back to your homebrew days.
Some, for sure, yeah.
You are considered a Grandmaster beer judge?
Correct.
What does that even mean?
The Beer Judge Certification Program deals with training judges, and so I got involved with that. I've judged in hundreds of homebrew contests. I judged at the Great American Beer Festival, World Beer Cup.
How much time have you invested in that?
Quite a bit. There's a written test, and then there's experience points you get. And over a course of 9 years, I went from novice to Grandmaster level 1. My brewing got a lot better when I became a judge. You start tasting so many other people's beers. When it comes time to brew your own, you kind of know what you want.
Barley, hold on. He's eating your treat. And he ate his leash. Come here. You little kid. You want to show me around the brewery?
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
In 2014, AleSmith moved into this gigantic facility, which includes the largest tasting room in California.
We have basically 3 units of the equal size, so this whole place is 109,000 square feet. You want to see the cool box?
Yeah, let's see the cool box.
Go ahead, give that a tug.
Is this a tug?
Give it a tug.
Woo!
Voila.
Whoa, Barley. This is a massive cool box.
This is big. While we were designing this facility, I had all sorts of ideas. I wanted this to be like a playground. I wanted beer drinkers to come in and have lots of things to do. Come on in. We have the speakeasy here.
This is nice.
So we do all sorts of different barrel-aged beers, and rye, whiskey, and Scotch barrels, and tequila. Our speakeasy holds approximately 20 people, and you can find at any one time 12 different barrel-aged beers. Yeah, it looks like they're canning 394 right now.
394 is the name of the collaboration beer AleSmith created in honor of San Diego Padres legend Tony Gwynn.
Anytime we're open, you can come and walk through the Tony Gwynn Museum and see over 300 items from his career. It's free to the public. Any baseball fan would find it really interesting.
When Peter moved into this new facility in 2014, he sold the original AleSmith brewery to another beer icon in Denmark, Mikkel from McKellar Brewing.
We both share the same vision of making the best possible beer we can, making excellent beer that the world enjoys.
McKellar Brewing in San Diego is consistently voted one of the top breweries in the world, even though the owner operates it from Copenhagen.
We're gonna see what the beer scene's like in Copenhagen. Seems like it's a lot like San Diego, but in Europe, so maybe it's just more fancy. We're gonna die!
Denmark is a beer country. Everybody in Denmark grew up with beer. When I was a kid, I drank beer. When I see pictures of my parents, if they met with friends, they were drinking beer. San Diego is pretty much the center of craft beer in the States. But the modern movement on craft beer in Europe actually started in Denmark. If you walk around Copenhagen, there's so much craft beer. We have access to pretty much every beer in the world at the moment. And the whole city is just exploding with craft beer. There's just brewers and beer geeks running around Copenhagen. It's crazy.
Copenhagen's an amazing city. The beer scene out there is still very young. But at the same time still very knowledgeable because of kind of Mikkel and McKellar has really kind of turned Copenhagen into beer city that it is, I believe.
I've done 1,000 different beers. I'm known for doing it. Pretty much every style in the world. Use every ingredient, do a lot of crazy stuff. Every single time I do a new beer, I try to make the best beer in the world. When I was a home brewer, I did an oatmeal stout as a home brewer, and it was good, but it's not very interesting. It's not like what I wanted. And then I had tasted a beer from a local San Diego brewery, AleSmith, called Speedway Stout, that had coffee in it. So I emailed the owner of AleSmith. I had never met him, never talked to him. Just found his email, emailed him and asked, how do you add the coffee to your Speedway Stout? And he replied, which was pretty cool. I thought one of the best breweries in the world replies to a whole Danish homebrewer's question.
I didn't get a lot of emails back then from people in Europe home brewing, and I was like, oh, this is cool. So I wrote back. He was very respectful and asked for some advice and very praising of Speedway Stout, and he loved it, and how did we get the coffee in it. And I don't like to just tell someone how to do it. That's no fun for them either. So I just challenged him to try a few different experiments, dosing, keeping good records and amounts, and then scaling and things like that. And we became friends.
So I added the coffee to my oatmeal stout, and it was voted the best stout in the world. It was kind of the beer that started the whole Mikkeller thing that got us known all over the world.
In 2014, I was selling my old brewery, and I thought, why don't I just offer it to Mikkel? You know, maybe he wants to get into the manufacturing side because he was a gypsy brewer at the time.
It was kind of an offer I couldn't turn down.
And he was all into it, and we were shaking hands on it and handing him the keys half a year later.
And now I'm extremely happy that I didn't, even though it's been very, very hard work. It's very hard work being 9 time zones away.
And now I'm just stoked because I have fresh Mikkeller beer down the street from me that I can pick up whatever I want.
Which is
great. Yeah, and watching his career path and grow and to become an icon in the industry has been really fun for me too to watch.
Let's head on over to Ballast Point, catch up with Colby Chandler.
Colby Chandler was the president of the San Diego Brewers Guild for many years. A lot of brewers look up to him. He's very supportive of other brewers. He's very important in the San Diego beer community.
The #1 most pivotal, influential brewery in San Diego beer history is Ballast Point. Without Ballast Point, none of this would be here.
From its inception as a small home brew store, Ballast Point grew into a brewing powerhouse, thanks to beers like Sculpin.
One of my favorite things about Ballast Point is all the firsts that we do. You know, Sculpin with those big juicy hops was kind of a first in a lot of ways. That juicy tropicalness wasn't really found in beer unless you actually put the fruit into the beer.
Nobody had done like the big banger, tropical fruit, 3 pound per barrel dry hop, tastes like Skittles in a beer. You know, there's like East Coast IPAs and you know, you had your Pliny's and stuff, but nothing that was like over the top like that.
I had a Sculpin and I went, what is this stuff? And I went, this is fucking different. This is proper beer.
First brewed in 2005 at Home Brew Mart, Sculpin was the brainchild of Doug Duffield and George Catalin.
Colby wanted a new IPA recipe and turned to George and Doug, who are both award-winning IPA homebrewers, and said, hey, you guys are gonna brew on the big system next Thursday, something neither of them had done before. You gotta bring me a recipe.
Doug actually came to me and goes, what are we gonna do? I go, I have no idea. And he goes, well, I have an idea. I go, what? He goes, let's combine our 2 homebrew recipes together. And he goes, what do you think? I go, I was like, that's awesome. Yeah, let's do it. He goes, good. Here's what it looks like.
It was already done. When Sculpin took off, it was right also around the time of the hop shortage. Simcoe and Amarillo were in short supply. I mean, this was probably 05, 06. I remember we didn't have Simcoe or Amarillo in the home brew store for like 2 years because every drop of it that this company had was going towards Sculpin. And then Alex Tweet, he has one of the most developed palates of any brewer that I know. Part of the guy's job was to keep Sculpin going with the hops that we have and kind of incorporating little tweaks and hop blends to keep Sculpin tasting the same, even though we didn't have all the Simcoe and Amarillo that we needed. 2010, Ballast started making some money and had new hop contracts, and all the Simcoe and Amarillo was like available again. And Alex had moved on to Modern Times. He was one of the original guys that started Modern Times. There's another connection to Home Brew Mart. You know, a guy that started as a home brewer here, helping to start Modern Times, and now he owns Fieldwork up in the Bay Area. So I mean, there's another Home Brew Mart connection.
2010, World Beer Cup hits. Ballast Point takes Champion Brewery.
Do you think that was like a turning point?
It was a huge turning point. We had like this magic that happened that year. It was insane. 2010, we added 4 200-barrel tanks and opened up an international market. And I just remember all of us sitting around the table going, what the hell is going on? And we were making like 20,000 barrels, you know? It was like, That was like perplexing. I was like, how are we gonna do this?
That happened in a short amount of time.
It did, yeah. I think from like 2010 to 2015, we averaged 87% growth year over year. And
that's
one of those
intense.
years was 138% growth. It was just insane. There were periods of time where we couldn't drop a tank fast enough. Like we would drop it, it hit the ground. While they're bolting it up, we'd be hooking up hoses to CIP it because wort needed to go into it. It was just bonkers. That's what helped propel Ballast Point to, like, you know, one of the largest breweries in the nation.
In 2015, Ballast Point was sold to Constellation Brands for $1.2 billion.
CBI comes in with this monster offer.
What was that monster offer?
It was $1 billion, you know, just
$1 billion.
and some change. It was just the wildest ride.
News of the sale was not well received in the San Diego beer community, who are fiercely loyal to local craft beer.
That was a game changer in 2014 when Ballast Point sold for more than like tech companies sell for. It was insane. And that's when really things started getting weird.
It was interesting when Constellation bought Ballast Point. I think it all took us by surprise. Mainly, I think the $1 billion figure. That one was like,
yeah.
Whoa, because we'd seen breweries sell for 50 million, like 100 million. That was like big time money. And so when you saw the $1 billion figure, it was like, damn. But I also felt like a lot of the San Diegans started drinking more Stone and more Society and other local breweries. It's hard to like support international conglomerates, even if they're in your backyard. It's like seeing a band you like go big. It's a good, like you feel good for the band, but at the same time, it's like it loses that, like they were mine kind of feeling, I guess.
One of the toughest things for me getting bought by Constellation was that the 6 years that I was the president of the San Diego Brewers Guild, we didn't have any resources at Ballast Point. Like when I was the president, that was all volunteer. And if you don't think I did San Diego Brewers Guild work on Ballast Point dime, you're sadly mistaken. So here we are, 20 years later, and we have one of the biggest companies behind us, and nobody wants our help. That was so frustrating.
Under Constellation, Ballast Point continued their mass expansion, but ultimately, it wasn't a good fit.
The problem was I just don't think that they knew the craft beer business as well as they thought they did.
In 2019, Ballast Point was sold for a second time in 4 years. This time to a small Illinois brewery, the Kings and Convicts. Ballast Point was independent once again.
We're stoked about being independent, but we're also not ashamed of what we learned. I'm personally excited about Ballast Point being known for beer again and not who owns them. Because our beer is better than ever.
100%.
One of my favorite things is turning on adults to new flavors, right? Because it's so hard to get people to branch out, to taste different things. To have a smoked beer, I mean, it's hard.
What kind of style is this specifically?
This is a smoked Marzen. This beer in particular uses beechwood smoked malt from the town of Bamberg in Germany.
I love this beer, by the way.
It's rich. It's a rich beer.
So when you're judging a beer, what are you really looking for? And let's kind of use this one as an example.
So grab the straw.
Okay.
And then stir it to get the head going on it.
Oops. I did not anticipate that!
You were aggressive.
I've been told that. Harley, no, don't drink that right now.
Oh, it's good.
He's like, but it tastes
Tastes
so
like
good.
I haven't drank mine yet. Let's just switch.
Okay. All right, so what is the first thing I'm looking for in a beer when I'm judging it?
Actually look at it. Use your eyes. Look at the head retention.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great sign of a well-built beer. You can also look at the color. Make sure you get it in the light. You can see those garnet, those really like ruby red hues on the side. And then you taste it, you get it on your palate. You're looking for all of those flavors: umami, salt, bitter, sweet.
The next thing we're looking at is aroma.
Aroma is great.
Okay.
You gotta get your nose in there, you gotta smell it. Aroma tells you everything.
I definitely get like a lot of malt and smoke on it, as is expected.
The smell is everything. We all have an amazing lab that's right in the middle of our face. And I know that Ballast Point, for many years, maybe even a decade, that was our only lab, was the nose on our face and our palate. And we made beers that smelled and tasted good.
That's what counts, right?
I hope so. You know, sometimes you just want the owner to bring you a beer.
They're lingering in the background.
I felt a lingering going on.
Look at the bloody dog. The dog's ears are awesome.
Captain Barley.
Captain Barley. He's the best. So why did you decide to buy Ballast Point?
Listen, there are opportunities that come across in your life that you go, man, if I had that chance, I'm never going to let that chance go by. Ballast Point? Are you kidding me? I love this brand. I love the beer. I love the history. I love everything about it. But the fact that it became available to us, fuck that. Of course I'm going to do it.
For sure. What was your first experience at Ballast Point?
Down at Home Brew Mart, I first went in and had a Sculpin in Home Brew Mart. And I just loved the joint. I just loved the joint. I love the beer, I love the people, I just love what it felt like. It just felt gritty, it felt real, it felt like San Diego. And so that's my first experience of Ballast Point.
Plus you were a home brewer.
Yes, right. So I was a home brewer to start with, and I did this a long time ago when I was back in Australia at university, and the beer that I brewed back in Australia was shit. It was shit.
So it wasn't really comparable to Kobe's beer?
Oh my God. Oh my God. If it had alcohol in it, we were thumbs up. I mean, all of our fermentation happened in the laundry. And then we drank it because we were poor college kids. And we go, this is awesome. It wasn't, it sucked. And that's how we started brewing beer.
So other than being in Australia, a poor college kid, selling shitty beer out of your laundry room, what else is your background in beer?
Just drinking it. I've drunk a lot of beer. I drank a lot of beer. I'm Australian. I had my first beer at 12. Australians are brought up on beer. When I first came to the US, I came in '98, and I said, "Holy shit, your beer sucks." Right? I didn't like it. But all of a sudden, the United States has blown up as a wonderful craft brewing nation that no one else can do. No one else can do. The US can change on a dime, and it has. In 25 years, beer has changed in this country.
What's the biggest thing you've been surprised about Ballast Point?
Coming in from the outside, I didn't know how passionate San Diego was. I'm not even talking beer, like the Padres. San Diego Padres fans own the Padres. And I honestly believe that San Diego beer fans felt like they owned Ballast Point. And so when it got bought, it's like you ripped my heart out. You took it away from me. It's hard when you break up with your girlfriend that you've had since bloody high school, right? You've grown up, and then you're a dickhead, and then for you to get it back, you've really got to try fucking hard. And that's what I think is Ballast Point.
Wow,
we know that.
Parental girlfriend.
It is, it is.
I like it. But, that's a good analogy.
But think of this. If she's worth it, what are you going to do?
Work as hard as you can.
We're going to go like fucking crazy to get it back.
It's perfect.
That's it. That is it.
I learned a lot over the past 4 years. It was very good college education. So it's going to be fun to take Brendan's attitude and apply it to a college educated brewery and to see actually what we can do with it, you know?
How stoked are you, Kobe?
It's been an amazing ride. Nobody's going to deny that. Honestly, it's full circle. We were started by Jack White, a home brewer. We grew the business, we grew the community. We kept going through every step of growth, including, you know, a corporate stage. And the full circle's back to homebrewers again. So how can I not be stoked?
The feedback that we've gotten from doing this is that how San Diego became such a big epicenter for really great beer is that everybody lifts each other up, everybody helps each other, and the center of that, everybody says, is Homebrew Mart and Ballast Point, and Colby Chandler.
One of the things that I love that comes from our homebrew roots is that we help people. We teach people. It's in our nature. You can't run a homebrew store since 1992 and not be patient with people and not want to give and make beer better. We'll always help San Diego breweries. We will help anybody that asks for help. And that's been our biggest thing, is like, if you ask us, we will help you. You just gotta ask.
San Diego is proof that it takes more than water, hops, malt, and yeast to brew great beer. That's because great beer is more than just beer. It's the people who've elevated their trade to an art form. It's those who are passionate behind the bar pouring every pint. And it's the thousands of people who find joy at the bottom of every glass. And the greatest beers are found on the coast where the waves hit the sand and a rising tide lifts all boats. In San Diego, California.